Welcome back to Clinical Psychology Community UK. My name is Holly and I'm currently a second year trainee clinical psychologist about to go into my third year. Today we are going to be talking about behaviours that challenge, and this can come up in learning disabilities, working with children and families, possibly with dementia care as well, and maybe in inpatient settings. That sort of thing can come up a lot. So we are going to be talking about understanding a little bit about behaviour and also some of the strategies that you can use to support people. Before we get into it, I just want to say thank you so much for watching and following. If you can give us a like and share this video, that would be really great. Let's get into it. Okay, so supporting with behaviours that challenge. This actually was a CPD session that I helped deliver to our local MDT on my learning disability placement. So I've sort of adapted it a little bit to make it a bit more general. So let's start by understanding behaviour. What are behaviours that challenge? Okay, so behaviours that challenge is kind of a phrase that we use to refer to things that clients do that can be distressing and or difficult to manage and support. Behaviours that challenge are generally a way for clients to communicate that they have a need that needs meeting. Effectively, they've got some need, they can't really communicate it in another way, so it comes out in a kind of behavioural way. There is a debate around the language, so I've chosen to use the term behaviours that challenge because that is the current thinking. This is being recorded in 2023, that's the current thinking of the correct or most correct language to use. It used to be challenging behaviour, and I think that's what you will see a lot of referrals come in for, or you'll see a lot of people working around, oh, they've got challenging behaviour, that sort of thing. But actually there's a lot of concern around, well, who's it challenging for? Is it, is that okay to say? So this is the current language. So some examples then could be hurting other people, hair pulling, hitting, kicking, pinching, could be hurting themselves. So sort of we call that self-injurious behaviour. You might see that around. That could be head banging, hand biting, skin picking, those sorts of things. They could also be destructive behaviours. So that could be throwing things, breaking furniture, punching walls, those sorts of things. Eating inedible objects, so pen lids, bedding, kind of chewing on things, but possibly also eating them. And also some other behaviours like smearing, removing clothes in public and running away. So these are just some of the examples of behaviours that challenge, but it can be a range of things. And also staff teams possibly maybe using the term behaviours that challenge inappropriately, and it might just be behaviours that are slightly irritating to staff teams. If you are a carer that's working with somebody for sort of 24 hours without a break, which does happen, them asking you a lot for reassurance or repeatedly asking the same question can be quite irritating. So sometimes it can be that as well. But really we're thinking about these examples here. So let's think about stages of behaviour then in terms of understanding some of that behaviour. So behaviours that challenge are unlikely to come out of nowhere. Okay, so there's likely to be some build-up. And we talk about stages of behaviour in this sort of way. So we have the green phase, the proactive phase, when somebody is mostly calm and relaxed. And ideally, we would all be in this all the time, but we know that that isn't life. And it's no different for the people that we support as well. Actually, they are perhaps even more likely to be more irritated by things or bored and understimulated if their care needs aren't appropriately assessed. So the green phase is that kind of phase when people are fairly calm. There's no challenging behaviour exhibited. Then we kind of move into the amber phase, which is what we think of as the active phase, and that's when a person starts to become anxious. So they might start becoming really irritated, they might start snapping at people or swearing at people, and that's what we call the amber phase. The red phase is our reactive phase, and that's where that challenging behaviour occurs. And it might be that people are literally seeing red, figuratively seeing red, when they just are acting on their impulses. They're not thinking about what's happening, and that's usually where those behaviours will occur. And then the blue phase, so that kind of post-reactive phase, the person starts to relax again, starts to realise what they've done perhaps, or maybe they don't have insight into what they've done, but they start to relax again. And the way that's presented makes it look like, okay, so you're in green, then you go to amber, then you go to red, then you go to blue, and that's easy. Well, it's not always linear like that. And quite often you can jump between green and amber and actually calm down again, green, that's fine, and we might not get to red. You know, if you actually sit and think about your own phases, it's usually quite rare for us to get into red, but there might be certain times that we get into amber, you know. So for example, if I'm about to be observed by a supervisor, I will be in amber and I will be really anxious and I'll be thinking lots of things and I'll be spiraling most likely, and it can sometimes be quite worrying. But then when you do it, you realize, okay, actually it's all right, and you kind of go into that green phase again. So I'd encourage you to have a little think about some of your stages of behaviour and patterns of behaviour, because I think that can be really helpful when you're supporting people to understand their behaviour, if you understand your own a little bit and you've applied this kind of model. Understanding triggers. So let's think about this. There are a huge number of triggers that can trigger challenging behaviour, a huge amount. And everyone will have their own profile of triggers and behaviours. So some of the things that we think about, particularly with a learning disability lens, we think about physical health, we think about, are they in any pain? Do they have any discomfort anywhere? How are they feeling emotionally? Are they bored perhaps? Do they have any sensory issues? Do they really want to escape things? Actually, do they want some attention? And I don't mean attention in a, oh, they're just attention seeking sort of way. But actually we all want attention at some point in our lives. And if you find the world quite confusing, actually you do want that social engagement and that attention. So all of these things, or none of these things, or two of these things, or three of these things can all trigger that behaviour. So it really depends. So understanding a person's triggers is really important. So that those assessment skills that we need to really think about all of the different things that could be triggering somebody's behaviour and understanding it well, because we can't put strategies in place to manage some of that behaviour until we've understood some of the reasons behind it, including the stages of behaviour and some of those triggers. And another thing that we also think about are the functions of behaviour. We've got tangible, which is to kind of get something like a food and drink or an object. And then we've got escape. So that's kind of to avoid things that the person doesn't like. That could be medical appointments like dentists or doctors. And then we have interaction. And this is kind of what I mean by attention. It's that interaction with people and those meaningful engagements and relationships with people that are really important. So having someone's attention, it's not nice to feel like you're being ignored. And if you've got a carer that is supporting two other people at the same time, that can be very difficult for people. And also like playing a game, having an exchange with somebody actually does, that is really meaningful for people and really valuable. And then sensory. So usually they want to feel a certain way by exhibiting that behaviour, by performing that behaviour, I suppose. Performing doesn't feel right, but doing that behaviour, let's say. So it could be that they're repeatedly rocking, or it could be that they're humming to themselves. It could be something to do with their sensory side of things. So if we think about someone's behaviour, then we can think about, okay, so which one of these four functions is it serving? And what are the triggers behind that? Is it that I'm lonely? Well, if I'm feeling lonely, then the function of that behaviour, of going up to somebody or throwing something might be to get someone's attention, to have an interaction because you're feeling sad and lonely. So that's it seems like we're just thinking about lots of things, but bringing them all together is the way that we can understand that behaviour. Thinking then about advice and strategies. So firstly, as I've said, the first step is always to understand the behaviour. And this, sometimes when you get referrals in for behaviours that challenge, it's kind of like, oh, they're just being really challenging. Okay, so what actually is it that they're doing? That, can you lay it out for me? What is the behaviour? Really get a crystal clear idea of what the behaviour is with some examples around that. So when was the last time they did it? That sort of thing. When is the behaviour happening? Is it that it happens every morning after breakfast? Is it that it happens right before someone goes to bed because they don't want to go to bed? Think about when that behaviour is happening, because there might be some patterns in it that no one's realised before. Why is the behaviour happening? That's the golden question, isn't it? And sometimes that can take a long time to work out. But those assessment skills and working with lots of different people, working with the staff team, really helpful. So it could be triggers, stages of behaviour, the functions of their behaviour as well. And then also importantly, what happens afterwards? Is it that, the behaviour results in someone being punished and being told to go to their room on their own? Well, actually, if their function of behaviour was to get interaction and their trigger was that they felt lonely, then sending them away to, be on their own is really not very helpful. And it's going to make them really upset and distressed, and maybe some different behaviours will come out. So it's important to think about that. So the key really is to understand the behaviour and minimise the triggers. And one of the ways that psychology might get involved is by asking the staff team and asking whoever it is to do ABC charts. So antecedent, behaviour, consequence charts. So that goes through what the behaviour was, what happened before it with the antecedent, and what happened afterwards with the consequence. And that's a really helpful way to gather data about the behaviours, so then you can understand them a little bit more. So then once we've kind of done a little bit of an assessment, we might start thinking about their physical needs. So particularly in people with learning disabilities, possibly with children or people with dementia, they may not be able to communicate using their words how they feel and what they need. They may not even be aware of the sensation of what pain is. They just know that they feel really bad and it's really upsetting. So often behaviours are used to communicate physical needs, and it may not be that they can recognise or communicate those needs. So things to consider are they in pain? And they may, if you directly ask somebody that doesn't understand the concept of pain, are you in pain? They're not going to know how to answer that. So you might need to be a bit creative about asking, does it hurt? If they understand the concept of hurt, or does it feel bad in your head, or anything like that. You can think about the way that you can phrase it, because everyone will have their own language that they use and own way of communicating if they're not verbal. Are they experiencing discomfort, for example, from clothing? Like some people can't wear wool. I personally can't wear wool. It's really itchy. I find it really difficult. So that might be an experience for them. Are they continent? Are they incontinent? Is their pad wet? Is it worth just checking that they're not, sat in wee? Because that is really distressing for somebody. Do they have any toileting issues? There you go. Yeah. So do they need to use the loo? Are they constipated? Do they have diarrhea? What is the situation toileting wise? Are they tired? And in terms of the physical side of things, this may be stuff that in psychology we overlook a little bit, and we might look to kind of nursing colleagues to think about it. But actually it's really important that we say to staff teams and whoever's involved, let's just check that they're all right. Let's check they haven't got an infection anywhere, or they haven't got tooth pain or anything like that, because let's go get them to their GP or the dentist just to double check that there isn't anything going on, because that actually might explain things. If you think about the last time you had a headache, oh, it's the worst. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody when I've got a headache. I used to have migraines, and I couldn't talk to anybody. I needed to be in a dark room. The idea that I had to have a migraine and be interacting with the world in a world that's already quite confusing is unfathomable. So that definitely is something to consider. And it's one of those kind of really basic things that people might have overlooked. So communication then. Using visual aids like pictures. So in learning disabilities, people might, if they, for example, don't know what they're doing in that day, you can come up with my day-to-day, or now next boards and timetables. So now we're going to tidy up, next we'll go outside, or now we're going to have breakfast, next we will go in the car somewhere. That can help people feel a little bit more like they understand what's happening. And also using signs like Makaton. Lots of people will use Makaton. Just really thinking about learning disabilities now. But even whoever we are, we all have our own vocabulary and our own way of communicating, and it's the same. So lots of the people that I worked with in learning disabilities had their own kind of signs that they would use that were based on Makaton, but then they kind of adapted them for themselves. So yeah, it's important to use, communicate in the way that they would need. And also repeating information and checking understanding, because it's really irritating when you're confused and people are talking to you and you don't really understand what's happening. I personally find that really irritating. So that would probably make me shout or cry, or if I already found things really, really confusing. So this kind of brings me on to choices a little bit. And this is one that my supervisor recommended, and it's something I hadn't really thought of actually. Helping somebody make choices. So if you are a person with a learning disability and you live in a supported living situation, or you live in a care home, or you have dementia and you live in a care home, or you're a child, you may not actually have that many choices around you. So what are they eating and drinking? Do they have any say in that? Some care homes are very rigid with, well, it's 3 o'clock, so it's tea time at 3 o'clock. So you can't have another drink at 3 o'clock because it's tea time. Well, what if they do want another drink? I wouldn't want to be told when I can have a cup of tea and when I can't. That's, so that even something so basic like that can really help someone feel that they're being listened to. What do they do every day? Do they go to day services? Do they not? Do they have friends that they want to see? Do they have family? What do they do every day? And do they have any say in that? And what they wear. Sometimes people don't care. And sometimes people do want their decisions made for them. But sometimes people really, really want to choose. And who they're with, who they spend their time with. What they do with their free time. And are they getting enough choice? I think that's a really important thing to think about. So physical needs, communicating effectively with them as much as you can. And are they getting enough choice? Can they tell the people around them what they want to choose? That's really important. And in psychology, we are, really well placed to be advocates for people that may not be able to communicate their needs. Of course, we need to be certain of what their needs are before we kind of communicate for them. But it's that collaborative working to understand what they need. And do they need somebody to voice that for them? Do they need someone to help them find the words to get their choices, heard? And how can they make their choices? Can they talk? Well, if not, then they're probably going to find it difficult to tell someone what their choice is. Can you use picture boards? Can you use signs to say yes or no? Or can you, there are other creative ways that you can think of to help people have their choice. And sensory things. Again, this all feels really basic, but I think doing lots of these little basic things can make a difference in how someone feels. So considering the environment, changing location if it's too loud or too bright, turning the lights down even if you need to, making it quieter. So closing windows, turning off fans, air conditioning, extractor fans, going somewhere without people can be helpful. Encouraging the use of headphones and earphones or sunglasses for those kind of sensory dampening effects. Movement as well can be really soothing, even if it's just rocking or dancing or walking around, that can be really good. Equally, some people just want to sit still and sit quietly without anyone touching them or anyone talking to them. So here are a few different sensory things you can do, but it is important to talk to the person and communicate with them and work out what might be helpful. Offer them options. Do you want the lights up or down or off? Or do you want to go somewhere quieter, or should we close the door? Giving people options. Then engagement. So like I say, boredom can be a trigger for challenging behaviour. Are they bored? Do they have enough social activities and relationships to allow them to enjoy life the way that they want to? Are they busy enough? Do they just go to one activity? Do they just go swimming for an hour one day and then do nothing else? What is in their care package for them to be having? So those are some of the things that you can do, some of those little basic strategies, and anyone can do that, whatever your profession, not just psychology, whatever your profession, anybody can recommend these things by understanding some of that behaviour. In terms of what might follow, it could be that psychology gets involved. It could be that there's an assessment of behaviours and environment to understand the triggers and functions of that behaviour or behaviours. It could be reviewing or producing positive behaviour support plans. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a video on PBS. It could be liaising with staff teams and offering staff sessions to help teams understand those behaviours, offering recommendations, and then planning around those recommendations. So how are they going to be implemented? Who's responsible for making sure that they are implemented? And then reviewing them is a massive part of what we do. So in there, you can see that we've got that assessment, formulation, intervention and evaluation. We've got all of those stages that are so inherent to psychology in there. There is some really good information in all of these places. I'll make sure that they are in the description down below. that have so much information. The Challenging Behaviour Foundation particularly has a lot of really useful information that a lot of this presentation came from there. So definitely have a look at that if you're interested. In summary then, behaviours that challenge are always for a reason, and they can be triggered by a huge range of things. Understanding that behaviour is the best way to help manage it. So strategies to help can include considering physical health needs, communicating information clearly in a way that suits this person, providing choices and options, and making some changes to their sensory environment if that's helpful. And then also engagement. And some signposting as well. So you can signpost staff teams and family members to those signposting options as well, because that can be really helpful for people. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you on the next video. Drop me a comment down below if there's anything you want me to cover or anything that you have to add to any of these suggestions that I've made. Really want to share all the information that we've got together. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.